Alright, I think this would be roughly part 4 of Vaticanus Citadel. Alright, this is the continuation on Caligulus and his reign and what happens among the circumstances. Alright, Western expansion. In AD 40, Caligula expanded the Roman Empire into Mauritania and made a significant attempt at expanding into Britannia, even challenging Neptune in his campaign. The conquest of Britannia was fully realized by his successors. Mauritania was a client kingdom of Rome ruled by Ptolemy of Mauritania. Caligula invited Ptolemy to Rome and then had him suddenly executed. Mauritania was annexed by Caligula and subsequently divided into two provinces, Mauritania, Tingitania, and Mauritania, Caesarenicis, separated by the river Malua. Pliny claims that division was the work of Caligula, but Dio states that in 42 AD an uprising took place which was subdued by Gaius Paullinus and Genius Osidius Geta, only after which division took place. This confusion might mean that Caligula originally made the decision to divide the province, but the implementation was postponed because of the rebellion. The first known equestrian governor of the two provinces was one Marcus Flavinius in the office in 44 AD. Details of the Mauritanian events of 39 to 44 AD are unclear. Cassius Dio wrote an entire chapter on the annexation of Mauritania by Caligula, but it is now lost. Caligula's move seemingly had a strictly personal political motive, that is, fear and jealousy of his cousin Ptolemy, and thus the expansion was not set about in response to the pressing military economic needs. However, the rebellion of Tacfarinas had shown how exposed Africa Proconsularis was to its west and how the Mauritanian client kings were unable to provide protection to the province, and it is thus possible that Caligula's expansion was a prudent response to potential future threats. Britannia. There seems to be another campaign to Britannia that was aborted. This campaign is derided by ancient historians, with accounts of Gauls dressed up as Germanic tribesmen at his triumph and Roman troops ordered to collect seashells as spoils of the sea. The few primary sources disagree on what precisely occurred. Modern historians have put forward numerous theories in an attempt to explain these actions. This trip to the English Channel could have merely been a training and sleuthing mission. The mission may have been to accept the surrender of the British chieftain Adminius. Seashells or conchae in Latin may be a metaphor for something else, such as female genitalia. Perhaps the troops visited brothels or boats. Perhaps they captured several small British boats. Claims of divinity. When several kings came to Rome to pay their respects to him and argued about their nobility of descent, he cried out, "Let there be one Lord, one king." In AD 40, Caligula began implementing very controversial policies that introduced religion into his political role. Caligula began appearing in public, dressed as various gods and demigods such as Hercules, Mercury, Venus, and Apollo. Reportedly, he began referring to himself as a god when meeting with politicians, and he was referred to as Jupiter on occasion in public documents. A sacred precinct was set apart for his worship at Miletus in the province of Asia, and two temples were erected for worship of him in Rome. The temple of Castor and Pollux on The forum was linked directly to the imperial residence on the Palatine and dedicated to Caligula. And here's it over here to the right in this picture. It's a ruins of the temple of Castor and Pollux in the Forum Romanum. It said ancient resources as well as recent archaeological evidence suggests that at one point Caligula had the palace extended to annex this structure. Okay. Alright, let us continue to where we're at. Alright. He would appear here on occasion and present himself as a god to the public. Caligula had the heads removed from various statues of gods and replaced with his own in various temples. It is said that he wished to be worshipped as Neos Ilios, the new sun. Ha, this makes sense now. It's clear that they were doing pagan sun worship of the heavenly luminaries, and now he make himself an idol and refer to himself as Neos Ilios, which is mean new sun. So he is now the new star system. Indeed, he was represented as a sun god on Egyptian coins. Caligula's religious policy was a departure from that of his predecessors. According to Cassius Dio, living emperors could be worshipped as divine in the East, and dead emperors could be worshipped as divine in Rome. Augustus had the public worship his spirit on occasion, but Dio describes this as an extreme act that emperors generally shield away from. Caligula took things a step further, and had those in Rome, including senators, worship him as a physical living god. Eastern policy. Caligula needed to quell several riots and conspiracies in the eastern territories during his reign. Aiding him in his action was his good friend Herod Agrippa, who became governor of the territories of Batanea and Trachonitis after Caligula became emperor in AD 37. The cause of tension in the East was complicated, involving the spread of Greek culture, Roman law, and the rise of the Jews in the empire. Caligula did not trust the prefect of Egypt, Avilius Flaccus. Flaccus had been loyal to Tiberius, had conspired against Caligula's mother, and had connections with Egyptian separatists. In AD 38, Caligula sent Agrippa to Alexandria unannounced to check on Flaccus. According to Philo, the visit was met with jeers from the Greek population, who saw Agrippa as the king of the Jews. Flaccus tried to placate both the Greek population and Caligula by having statues of the emperor placed in Jewish synagogues. As a result, riots broke out in the city. Caligula responded by removing Flaccus from his position and executing him. In AD 39, Agrippa accused Herod Antipas, the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, of planning a rebellion against Roman rule with the help of Parthia. Herod Antipas confessed and Caligula exiled him. Agrippa was rewarded with his territories. Riots again erupted in Alexandria in AD 40 between Jews and Greeks. Jews were accused of not honoring the emperor. Disputes occurred in the city of Jamnia. Jews were angered by the erection of a clay altar and destroyed it. In response, Caligula ordered the erection of a statue of himself in the Jewish temple of Jerusalem, a demand in conflict with Jewish monotheism. In this context, Philo wrote that Caligula regarded the Jews with most especial suspicion, as if they were the only persons who cherished wishes opposed to his. The governor of Syria, Publius Petronius, fearing civil war if the order were carried out, delayed implementing it for nearly a year. Agrippa finally convinced Caligula to reverse the order. Scandals. Philo of Alexandria and Seneca the Younger describe Caligula as an insane emperor who was self-absorbed, hungry, killed on a whim, and indulged in too much spending on sex. He is accused of sleeping with other men's wives and bragging about it, killing for mere amusement, deliberately wasting money on his bridge, causing starvation, and wanting a statue of himself erected in the Temple of Jerusalem for his worship. Once, at some games at which he was presiding, he ordered his guards to throw an entire section of the crowd into the arena during intermission to be eaten by animals because there were no criminals to be persecuted and he was bored. Roman Cestitrius depicting Caligula, AD 38. The reverse shows Caligula's three sisters Agrippina, Drusilla, and Julia Livilla, with whom Caligula was rumored to have carried an incestuous relationship. Wow, what is the same thing I said earlier on? I picked up something there in the other part 3. While repeating the earlier stories, the later sources of Suetonius and Cassius Dio provided additional tales of insanity. They accused Caligula of incest with his sisters, Agrippa the Younger, Drusilla, and Livilla, and say he prostituted them to other men. They state he sent troops on illogical military exercises, turned the palace into a brothel, and most famously planned or promised to make his horse, Insectatus, a consul, and actually appointed him a priest, Incitatus, consul. The validity of these accounts is debatable. In Roman political culture, insanity and sexual perversity were often presented hand in hand with poor government. Assassination and aftermath. Caligula's actions as emperor were described as being especially harsh to the Senate, the nobility, and the equestrian order. According to Josephus, these actions led to several failed conspiracies against Caligula. Eventually, a successful murder was planned by officers within the Praetorian Guard led by Cassius Caira. The plot is described as having been planned by 3 men, but many in the Senate, army, and equestrian order were said to have been informed of it and involved in it. This situation escalated when in 40 AD Caligula announced to the Senate that he would be leaving Rome permanently and moving to Alexandria in Egypt, where he hoped to be worshipped as a living god. The prospect of Rome losing its emperor and thus its political power was the final straw for many. Such a move would have left both the Senate and the Praetorian Guard powerless to stop Caligula's repression and debauchery. With this in mind, Cahiria convinced his fellow conspirators to quickly put their plot into action. According to Josephus, Cahiria had political motivations for the assassination. Suetonius sees a motive in Caligula calling Cahiria derogatory names. Caligula considered Cahiria effeminate because of her weak voice and for not being firm with tax collection. Caligula would mock Cahiria with names like Priapus and Venus. On January 22nd and 41 AD, although Suetonius dates it as 24 AD. Cahiria, oh wait a minute, 24, okay, January. Cahiria and other guardsmen accosted Caligula while he was addressing an acting troop of young men during a series of games and dramatics held for the divine Augustus. Details on the event vary somewhat from source to source, but they agree that Cahiria was first to stop Caligula, followed by a number of conspirators. Suetonius recalls that Caligula's death was similar to that of Julius Caesar. He states that both the elder Gaius Julius Caesar and the younger Gaius Julius Caesar were stabbed 30 times by conspirators led by a man named Cassius Longinus and Cassius Chaerea. The Cryptoporticus underground corridor, where this event would have taken place, was discovered beneath the imperial palaces on the Palatine Hill. By the time Caligula's loyal Germanic guard responded, the emperor was already dead. The Germanic guard, stricken with grief and rage, responded with a rampaging attack on the assassins, conspirators, innocent senators, and bystanders alike. The Senate attempted to use Caligula's death as an opportunity to restore the Republic. Chaerea attempted to convince the military to support the Senate. The military, though, remained loyal to the office of the emperor. The grieving Roman people assembled and demanded that Caligula's murderers be brought to justice. Uncomfortable with lingering imperial support, the assassins sought out and stabbed Caligula's wife, Casonoia, and killed their young daughter, Julia Drusilla, by smashing her head against a wall. They were unable to reach Caligula's uncle, Claudius, who was spirited out of the city after being found by a soldier hiding behind a palace curtain, to the nearby Praetorian camp. Claudius became emperor after procuring the support of the Praetorian Guard and ordered the execution of Chaerea and any other known conspirators involved in the death of Caligula. According to Suetonius, Caligula's body was placed under turf until it was burned and entombed by his sisters. He was buried within the mausoleum of Augustus. In 410, during the sack of Rome, the tomb ashes were scattered. Alright, this is end of part 4. So I'll continue part 5 on Claudius.